So in this short video, I want to walk you through some analysis of a set of items that were generated by the ChatGPT artificial intelligence tool. And I wanted to sort of extend what you were asked to do in the project, because it applies to a more comprehensive way of evaluating the potential effectiveness of a set of items that you might not create yourself, but that you might want to review and use, that were generated or created somewhere else. So in this particular example, I'm going to walk through some items that a student submitted in their project that were addressed at measuring a particular Virginia standard of learning for science, and the target population in this case were second graders. And it occurred to me as I was reading through the set of items that there was something that really needed to be addressed about the overall validity and fairness of the items that didn't really get addressed by applying the rules of good item design to the set. So I kind of want to walk through it with you so that you can better understand the need to not only apply those really great design rules that you have for this, that you're learning about in this class when you evaluate items, but also looking more closely at the content validity as well as the fairness aspect of what constitutes good items. So the student did a great job of generating items for this project and evaluating them with the rules, and a good job in general overall. So I was really happy with it. But again, as I walked through it, I realized that there were some things that didn't get emphasized for project number 2 that do need to be emphasized as you move into the next project where you're going to be actually writing your own items. So let's take a look then at this item set in more detail. So the Virginia SOL for second grade science that the student used as the foundation for this project was SOL 2.3, which is that the students will investigate and understand that matter can exist in different phases. And the 3 key ideas are that matter has mass and takes up space, solids, liquids, and gases have different characteristics, and heating and cooling can change the phases of matter. That's pretty heavy for second grade, and you would need to write those individually, that A, B, and C as probably as individual items, because I'm not sure what you would expect a second grader to be able to do with an understanding that matter has mass and takes up space. So, however, let's take a look then at just some of the items that the AI tool generated to measure this SOL for second graders. Well, as I comment, by the way, when I look at these, I'm not going to be talking about the rule violations, if any. I'm going to be talking about the content validity that has to do with content accuracy, skill and knowledge alignment with those outcomes, and balance of representation. And to be honest with you, I don't have all 10 items listed, so balance of representation isn't something I'm going to talk specifically about. I'll look at content accuracy, and then I'll also look at fairness, or the bias that might be implicit in some of these items. So let's take a look at the first one. Okay, a multiple choice item. Which of the following is not a physical property of matter? So I have an issue with this because of the fact that it says physical property. And that's something that I didn't see directly in the standard, and that is something that requires a certain level of understanding. And whether a student understands that or not when they're 7, I'm not sure. And then you have as one of the choices reactivity, and I'm not sure that a a student would even really be able to understand that when they're 7 years old. So that one has some fairness issues with respect to vocabulary that could be problematic. Now, I will say this. I want to be really clear. The ChatGPT is an AI tool that is a language-based tool, and so it can only try to measure outcomes using words. Obviously, for assessment items at second grade, it's quite possible that images or the addition of images could make the items a lot more fair and consequently more valid. Here's another item. Which of these is an example of a solid? So this is kind of interesting because this would be an item that you'd probably really want to measure because you want to know whether or not a second grader can differentiate between phases of matter. But I find it kind of a little odd that they chose ice cream as the solid, as opposed to all these other solids like wooden blocks or something that a second grader would be clear about. And ice cream just it melts so quickly that there may be students who don't really see or understand ice cream as a solid because their experiences with it has always been as this very malleable substance. Also, we have juice, which is okay. What temperature juice are we talking about? If a kid if their experience with juice are like popsicles made with juice, then that would be a difficult issue. And I know I might be splitting hairs here, but I think it's important for all teachers to be consistent in terms of being accurate with content. And then again, you look at this item, what is the smallest unit of matter that retains the properties of an element? Holy cow. If the student doesn't know what an element is, they're not going to know what an element is as a 7-year-old in second grade. And so this one, I believe, would be wildly inappropriate. And I know that the student who was reviewing these did indicate that this one does not align well with the outcomes. It's very unbiased in terms of language and is way beyond the scope of a 7-year-old. The student also asked the AI to generate some true and false. And as some of you might have discovered, when you asked for an answer key, one thing you realize is that unless you told the computer to generate some false items, then by default they generated true items by default. And again, as a teacher, you have to really look at the content, particularly of true-false items, with a really, really careful magnifying glass. So take the first one, for example. Matter is anything that takes up space and has weight. That is marked as true, but that wouldn't be true. The SOL addresses matter as anything that takes up space and has mass. And mass and weight can be very different, as you likely know. And in fact, it's one of those things that you have to teach kids in physical science in high school, that mass and weight are two different things. Weight can measure mass, the amount of mass that something is in a particular environment, like on our planet. But things can have mass and not have any weight, of course, if they're zooming around outer space. So that's just an example of content that would have to be vetted. But then there's also, again, the language is the thing that I focus on. Look at the third one. Solids have a definite shape and take up a fixed amount of space. A fixed amount of space. Would you have to explain that to a 7-year-old? And if so, would it even make any sense? That phrase, fixed amount of space. Fixed. So, having said all of this, I believe that many of these items are highly biased, and they're biased in the direction of kids who just have bigger vocabularies in 7th grade that are in second grade, that are outside the realm of of the language used in many of those items. And it reminds me of this classic cartoon that has circulated for years in different educational journals. Notice that the monkey has a big smile on his or her face because I think they're going to do well. And that monkey would be the kid who has a good vocabulary and can understand some of those words, or at least can decipher them or decode them within the context of those items. So items that reflect vocabulary that are beyond the scope of students would be an example of a bias for sure. And that's something that, again, goes beyond what I asked you to do in project number 2, but it's something to keep in mind as you move forward in this class and you both evaluate and generate your own items. So the last thing I want to say about language is that I did a readability test on that set of 10 items, and what I discovered I knew it would be this case, but I did discover that the readability indicated that the language was greater than 5th grade. And I'm going to end this short presentation by showing you how I use Microsoft Word to generate or determine the readability of a body of text if you've never done that before. So here are the procedures, or at least one procedure, for calculating the readability of a body of text. And so in this case, I'm going to calculate the readability of the text that constitutes the 10 assessment items for the 2nd grade assessment that is measuring the science outcome as part of this demonstration. So I cut and pasted all 10 of the items into a Word document, and I'm going to be using Word in order to calculate readability. And all I have to do in order to calculate readability is, first of all, I have to tell Microsoft Word that I want to calculate readability. Now, to do that, I'm going to open up the Word preferences, and that's a little window of preferences. If you're on a PC computer, I'm not exactly sure where you go to get these preferences for Word, but in the Mac, I just went up to the Word option in the main menu, and here it was. So I'm going to click on Spelling and Grammar, and I'm going to go down and select under Grammar. I'm going to select the option that says Show Readability Statistics. So once I do that, then here I am back in the document, and I'm going to click on the Review tab. So I was on the Home tab. I'm clicking on Review, and then I click on the Spelling and Grammar option, and you'll notice this gives me the word count and that. And at the very bottom of the window is the readability. And you can tell from these 3 different statistics, the one I'm interested in, honestly, is the grade level readability, the Flesch-Kincaid grade level, and this indicates that the body of text that I cut is calculated to be 5th grade, 6th month. So just from this statistic, I can probably assume that the writing is at a level that would be above 2nd grade in general.